I did my history on advertising on tobacco, cigarette, snuff, and tobacco advertising. The first ad ever printed for tobacco was in 1798 by the P. Lorillard and Company. Pierre Abraham Lorillard founded the company in 1760, and this is, or was, the oldest tobacco company in the United States. They marketed cigarettes under the names Newport, Maverick, Old Gold, Kent, Satin, and Max. They placed ads in the New York Daily Paper in 1789 to, in 1789 to advertise to the local areas of where they were distributing. They kept it small scale for transportation. It made it easier. The next gimmick, well, the first gimmick to come with cigarettes were cigarette cards, and this came out in 1875. They were used to stiffen packages, but eventually were used as an advertisement. They featured actresses, baseball players, Indian chiefs, sailboats, castles. John Player and Sons and Ogden both started making sets. These sets were coveted. They usually had 25, but could have as many as 100 cards in a set. They were originally printed on silk, and then adhered to a paper backing. They were discontinued after World War II to save paper. This is a cigarette card of John Flanagan. This one is Honus Wagner. It was a card that was referred to as the Holy Grail. It eventually sold for $2 million at an auction house. These are some examples of cigarette cards. These were actresses. These were the ships and sailors. Some baseball players. Captain over there on the left-hand side. Bull Durham was a next big tobacco company formed. Soldiers, it was started because soldiers from the Civil War raided John Green's tobacco crop while they were waiting for surrender. And when the soldiers returned home, they wrote Mr. Green and asked for more of his tobacco. He obliged, therefore Bull Durham was founded. It was originally manufactured by the American Tobacco Company, which was originally the P. Lorillard Company. Some of their advertisements were painted on the walls of businesses. The ads most usually featured a giant bull, and their tagline was "Roll Your Own." It was a way to market to people to save money by rolling their own cigarettes. Bull Durham ads also featured caricatures of black people in demeaning ways to draw attention to their product, especially during the Civil War. Over here on the left-hand side, you can see the people were drawn with big lips, and which was typically known as the Sambo style. This one over here, she's speaking in a way that was demeaning at the time, but that's how black people were seen. Eventually, the black middle class and influence in the 1920s increased in size, and this prompted an end to these types of ads. This is just an example of cigarette ads in the 1930s. They showcased a lifestyle and what type of person smoked cigarettes and how you would end up looking, and it was all an idea. Here's some other ads from the 30s and 40s. These were targeted towards women. Women were told to consider their throats and their digestion. Cigarettes were used as a diuretic for women. They told them they were toasty and they'd be good for them if they smoked them. There was a lot of misogynistic ads when looking up tobacco ads. Women with black eyes, sex. This one here is one of my favorites. It says, blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. The ones over here on the left-hand side for the moms. Before you scold me, Mom, maybe you'd better light up a Marlboro. So it would depict women, you know, couldn't be calm unless you smoked, and you couldn't handle your children unless you smoked. These are also some ads. Santa Claus, you have celebrity endorsements. This one over here, this man's fat until he reached for a lucky cigarette. He could finally run. Doctors smoke, you should too. Ronald Reagan smokes, you should too. It was a big idea that if somebody else smoked, you should smoke. Again, the whole lifestyle choice and how it made you appear. In the 50s and the 60s, cigarettes were the producers, or they brought you a specific show, so they advertised on the show. They sponsored television programs. This is when television was really big and cigarettes played a part in that.
Winston, the cigarette that changed America's mind about filter smoking. Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should. Now, Winston Filter Cigarettes bring you America's #1 panel show, I've Got a Secret, starring Gary Moore.
I've Got a Secret was a really big, popular show in that time, and Winston was the leading sponsor. Winston was also a sponsor of cartoons like the Flintstones, which is a huge primetime show at the time.
They sure work hard, don't they, Lonnie? Yeah? I hate to see them work so hard. Yeah, me too. Let's go around back where we can't see them. Gee, we ought to do something, Fred. Okay. How's about taking a nap? I got a better idea. Let's take a Winston break. That's it. Winston is the one filter cigarette that delivers flavor 20 times a pack. Winston's got that filter blend. Yeah, Fred. Filter blend makes the big taste difference, and only Winston has it up front where it counts. Here, ahead of the pure white filter. Winston packs rich tobaccos specially selected and specially processed for good flavor in filter smoking. Yeah, buddy, Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should.
The Flintstones have been brought to you by Winston, America's best-selling, best-tasting filter cigarette.
Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
So as you can see, their name was everywhere. They advertised everything. In the show Gunsmoke, in between gun and smoke, they'd shoot the gun twice, and that was to symbolize a cigarette break. In the the early 60s, Surgeon General's warning finally came out. The Surgeon General released a report on smoking and its health effects. Labels were then required to be on tobacco packaging, and restrictions were placed on advertising, making ads a lot simpler. This is a advertisement showing you what you needed to know about smoking and low tar, and low tar became a really popular advertisement in the future years. The 70s, this is an example of how advertisements became really simple. Low tar was popular. Women's cigarette was born and showcased black women and women in power suits, and their tagline was, "You've come a long way, baby." Shortly after that, Camel and Marlboro both started cash and had prizes for smoking. You saw advertisements in magazines where you could send in for belt buckles or canteens, things like that. In the 80s and the 90s, Camel was a huge company that advertised to children. They came up with Joe Camel, and they made cartoon versions of him, and teen smoking went up while adult smoking actually dropped during this time. Another in the 90s, advertisements came back to lifestyle. Everything showcased a fun and adventurous spirit. Everyone had fun when they were smoking, and therefore you'd have fun if you smoked. These are a couple of ads in the 90s for cigars and snuff. This Skoal ad is one of my favorites. Dipping versus smoking. Dipping, why? Because it's better for my sex life. What do you mean? While some are outside smoking, I'm inside working. Because the Surgeon General warnings and everything had come out, smoking wasn't as popular, so tobacco companies were trying to get you to dip, using celebrity endorsements to get you to smoke cigars. In the 2000 to present, ads are now used to teach. They showcase that you can die from smoking, you get cancer from smoking. These are a couple of advertisements for that. The Truth campaign came out in 2000s. This was nominated for an Academy Award. The Singing Cowboy. These campaigns taught people the things that cigarette companies didn't want you to know.
Try and right-click it.
There we go. These ads were really popular and smoking decreased. This is the last ad that I could find. It was 2009. The pictures in these, you have an ashtray with cigarette and smoke, and cigarettes, just looking at them makes you sick. The advertisements have changed from promoting smoking to letting you know what actually happens when you do smoke. We're usually just in magazines and newspapers, then to billboards and television, and now you hardly ever see a cigarette ad.